Okay, so Nintendo has finally provided a response to all of the backlash surrounding the Switch 2, in particular the $80 price tag for certain games. And the backlash is pretty extensive. It's not just the price point, the MSRP that's gone up, that's getting backlash, but also accessories going up in price and the upgrade packs associated with Switch 2 edition games that will require some form of payment, that are paywalled in some way, shape, or form. The fact that, the GameCube controller is paywalled behind Switch Online and pre-orders. There's also physical media, kind of the way that's being handled in some regards with the game key cards format not being something people are a fan of because it's physical media that requires an online download, which defeats the whole purpose of that particular physical media. Tariffs might force prices to go up. And then recently we learned Joy-Cons are not going to feature Hall effect joysticks, which would have mitigated the Joy-Con drift issue that's been prevalent for Switch 1. Most recently, we learned that Nintendo Switch 2 will not implement achievements, or at least, not yet. Zelda will have in-app achievements, but in terms of the overall system, Nintendo's just kind of not implementing that element, which achievements being something that a lot of people care about and find to be a great motivator to play and come back to games. Just some people found that a little disappointing. Oh, and another bit of news that cropped up today is that Canada has also recently delayed Switch 2 pre-orders because of tariffs, so on and so forth. Pre-orders have gone live in countries like UK and Australia and you name it, but in sort of the Americas, it seems like things are a little precarious right now on that front. But the focus today will be on the $80 MSRP for Mario Kart World. Now, here's something that I just for some reason missed in my previous videos that I learned very recently. It's not just Mario Kart World that will have an $80 MSRP. It's also Switch 2 editions of games that will be at that price point. And the most egregious example of this is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Look at this. That is $80. That's an old game, and it is getting a resolutions upgrade and faster loading times, and some app integration that's kind of neat. But many would argue that more consumer-friendly developers would provide those updates for free. We've seen far greater upgrades for free than what Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is giving us here. The fact that they kind of had the audacity to increase an old game's price point by an additional $10. At the very least, Mario Kart World is a brand new game for a brand new generation of consoles. But Tears of the Kingdom, it's the same game. There's no true additional content added to it. And they decided to price this at $80. It is actually freaking insane. And then for certain games that were once upon a time $60, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Mario Party Jamboree, those have gone up in price by $20. These are also $80. Utter insanity that old games are being treated as brand new releases that also implement the higher MSRP, the new base standard that they're trying to set here. And that goes to highlight that rumors that upgrade packs will be anywhere from $10 to $20 were absolutely true. $10 for stuff that is mainly just, like a graphics and performance upgrade, and $20 for games like Kirby and Mario Party that do add new content. And the response that Nintendo has provided trying to justify that price point has not made things any better. If anything, it's only made the backlash worse. People are not buying what Nintendo is relaying. The justification is just incredibly weak. So right here we have an article by the Washington Post whose headline reads, Nintendo boss Doug Bowser explains the $80 price for Mario Kart World. Oh, how fitting it is that the name of Nintendo of America's president is Bowser in this situation. So the Washington Post spoke with Bowser and inquired about the $80 price tag for games like Mario Kart World. And Bowser first started by pointing out that certain titles like Donkey Kong Bonanza are going to be $70. But that doesn't change the fact that people who will be buying Mario Kart World or certain Switch 2 edition games will still be shelling out $80. So the way Bowser kind of framed all of this is that what you see right there is variable pricing. We'll look at each game, really look at the development that's gone into the game, the breadth and depth of the gameplay, if you will, the durability over time, and the replayability of gameplay experiences. Those are all factors, and there's many more that go into consideration of what is the right price point for the game. So I think you can anticipate that there will be variable pricing, and we haven't set a benchmark. Except when you look at the kinds of games that are out right now or that will be releasing that you could argue are bigger in budget, bigger in scale than Mario Kart World and are still priced at $70 or less, there is no excuse for Mario Kart World to be priced at $80. Nintendo's acting as if Mario Kart World is reaching ambitions at the level of GTA 6 or something along those lines. And not to mention that at $70, Mario Kart World will make its money back and then some, but it's not about making enough money for Nintendo. It's just about making all the money they can. And while Mario Kart World doesn't feature microtransactions and all of these elements, the MSRP going up during the current economic state when wages have not kept up with the inflation, and when $80 for Mario Kart World and that succeeding sets a precedent for other companies to follow suit, setting the price point at $80 for their major releases, and this essentially increasing the floor of prices for gaming as a whole. Like, that's what Nintendo has done here. They've kickstarted something here that will screw over a lot of consumers and kind of extract more money from them in what is already a pretty expensive hobby. On this topic, the Washington Post, or specifically Gene Park, the editor of this article, asked Bowser if Nintendo breaking the seal on higher game prices is part of its role as an industry leader, if this is a trend that they want to kickstart because they're in a position to be able to do so. And what Bowser said was, I think it's less about representing the industry. This is really about Nintendo deciding the right thing to do for its products or what the pricing should be for its products overall. Even in the previous generation, we had some variability, referring to the fact that Tears of the Kingdom was $70, whereas a lot of other games were $60, except by the time Tears of the Kingdom came out, $70 had already kind of been standardized, but in this case, it's Nintendo who's trying to standardize yet another price increase for the baseline MSRP of major releases from $70 to $80. He further continued, I think for us, that's really how we want to proceed and go forward. I can't speak for other games that might be released by other publishers or platforms. It's more about what we think is right for our content, what is the right value for the consumers as they come into our platform. They're kind of trying to skirt responsibility for what actions other companies might take. They're kind of basically saying this whole $80 to $70 variability, we're just doing our thing, but people watch what you do, Nintendo, because you are an industry leader. And the second you price games at $8, everyone else will follow through, especially on a game like Mario Kart that will succeed, that will kind of essentially prove to the games industry that they can get away with pricing games at $80, that people will still buy them and they can make boatloads of money from that price point. It is going to set a baseline, whether you intend to or not. And so by doing so, you're not just kind of confined to this Nintendo bubble. You are changing the industry as a whole in a way that is worse for consumers in the long run, especially during the current economic state. You can see right here, just from reactions to this quote, that people are not happy about this. Somebody joking here, we will implement variable purchasing if you want to implement variable pricing. Perfect. That means Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, Mario Soccer, and ARMS should all be $40 or less. Variable goes in both directions, and if this means some games will be less than $60, then it's an extremely good thing, but I'm skeptical. See, that's the hypocritical aspect to this whole variable pricing. The ceiling is variable, but the floor is not. The floor stays at least $60 to $70, but Nintendo will not price something at below $60, $50, $40, $30 if the scale is kind of at that level. And so this is just kind of a bullshit excuse, this whole variable pricing thing. I mean, it's simple. They just want more money. They do want to raise the floor and slowly start to ingratiate this trend of games becoming $80. And they kind of want to future-proof themselves. And this is all just essentially a corporate, business-driven move that takes no consideration for consumers and kind of the state that they're living in because of the current world state. And it's not just Bowser who spoke up. Right here we have an article from news outlet IGN. They managed to speak to Bill Trinan, who is America's Vice President of Product and Player Experience. This is a quote that he put out there in regards to Mario Kart World's price tag, him trying to justify all this by saying, I would say it's less about the strategy of pricing Mario Kart World. It's more just whenever we look at a given game, we just look at what is the experience and what's the content and what's the value. Mario Kart World, I think, especially as you see from the Nintendo Direct, not to give you any hints or anything, but I did read your article this morning, and I think you had mentioned that you didn't find a lot to discover when roaming around. So I would say tune into our Mario Kart Direct to see what maybe you'll be able to find out about that. But honestly, this is a game that is so big and so vast, and you will find so many little things in it to discover, and there's still some other secrets remaining that I think as people end up buying and playing the game, they're going to find this to be probably the richest Mario Kart experience they've ever had. but that doesn't justify a price increase because we've had plenty of games that offer incredibly rich, dense, and vast experiences that still have the kind of consumer-friendly perspective in mind of like, let's just maintain the price point. Again, they're acting as if Mario Kart is doing something unprecedented when there are plenty of games out there that are vast and rich and dense and still maintain, $70 or less price point. Like, don't get me wrong, Mario Kart World does look like a far more ambitious Mario Kart, but it doesn't look to be the most ambitious open world game ever that has people thinking, oh, this is definitely worth $80, and it's definitely worth raising the entire floor of the base MSRP for AAA releases. Bill Trinan was also asked about the fact that certain Nintendo Switch 2 edition games will cost $80. Again, these are old games that they've decided to increase the price point of. Tears of the Kingdom being the most egregious example. This is a game whose enhancements, honestly, should all be free. The fact that this is an $80 package is just ridiculous. This game is not that old. The enhancements aren't so great as to justify the base $80 MSRP. This is like the audacity of this is actually, it genuinely pisses me off. So here's what Trinan had to say about that side of things, pricing Switch 2 edition games, which are old games, at $80. He said, well, again, what I would say is that we just look at each individual game and we look at the content, the value of that game, and then we say, what is the right price for the value of this entertainment? What I'll probably counter to some of that is that really what you're looking at is for the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, that's the physical price for somebody that has not bought the base game. For somebody who's bought Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, the upgrade packs, those are $9.99, which puts it at the same price point as those who have never purchased the game. $60 for Breath of the Wild plus $10 is $70, and then Tears of the Kingdom, $70 plus $10 is $80. So, regardless, it makes no difference. Bill Trinan does argue that if you happen to be a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack member, both of the Zelda upgrade packs are inclusive within that membership, so there's no additional charge for those, except it is an additional charge because you are relegated to a subscription to have access to those Switch 2 edition updates. I imagine that if you unsubscribe or one day you decide that you don't want to pay monthly for this, then you will lose access to those things. So there are conditions attached to that he doesn't seem to mention. And he says, finally, but I think overall our general approach is really just focus on what's the content, what's the value, and what's an appropriate price based on that. Well, you've already determined that Tears of the Kingdom is a $70 game, and you're not adding any new content on top of that. So you increasing the price point to $80 it's just you kind of overplaying your hand, because you've already set the price at $70. That's what it should be worth at most on the Nintendo Switch 2, even with the upgrades. Again, if it had new content, it'd be one thing, but performance and graphics upgrades, those things should be free. And yes, there's the whole app integration and whatnot, but as I've mentioned before, there are developers who've given far more content for free than what Tears of the Kingdom is doing here. The fact that they're charging $10, it is a freaking insult. Here's another response from Nintendo, specifically Bill Trinan, that Mashable got when they interviewed Bill Trinan. So when asked about the $80 price point for Mario Kart World, he said this: Mario Kart is a tremendous, tremendous amount of content. The way the world is so interconnected, I can literally drive across the continent. I'm sometimes racing through 6 different tracks on something like Knockout Tour and racing in between them, and it's all seamless and interconnected. Again, they're acting like this is the first game of its kind, open world racing, which has been done. Forza Horizon did it. So it's not like they're revolutionizing gaming here. They are taking the Mario Kart formula and expanding it, which is awesome. But again, they're games that are as ambitious, if not more, than Mario Kart World, that are priced at $70. Mario Kart World just hasn't earned that $80 price point in terms of what it's trying to do. It is no GTA 6. And even GTA 6, kind of the prospect of that being $80 is something that people are not happy about. So Mario Kart World doing it is, understandably drawing a lot of backlash given the standardization that it's setting for gaming as a whole in making things more expensive for everyone industry-wide. And then one more response I want to talk about from Nintendo is their justification for why the Welcome Tour game for Nintendo Switch 2 costs any kind of money whatsoever instead of it being included in the package. So we now know for sure that Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour costs $10, which just about universally it is agreed upon that this should have been packed into the game in the same way that Wii Sports was, in the same way that Astra Playroom was for PlayStation 5. especially when Astro Playroom and Wii Sports look to be far more kind of, extensive or more fun games, then the Welcome Tour, it costing any kind of money at all, is something that people are utterly baffled by. And the justification that Bill Trinen provided when IGN asked about that was, it's an interesting product. I think people will be able to see through Treehouse Live probably a little bit more maybe than you were able to see on the show floor. It's a pretty robust piece of software. There's a lot of great detail in there. For some people, I think there are people who are particularly interested in the tech and the specs of the system and things like that. For them, I think it's going to be a great product. It's really for people that want more information about the system rather than necessarily a quick intro to everything it does. And for that reason, and just the amount of care and work that the team put into it, I think it was decided that, yeah, this feels like $10 is not an exorbitant price. It feels like a good value for what you're getting out of the product. $10 is not exorbitant, but it's about the principle of the thing and the fact that better standards have been set by other console launches like the Wii and PlayStation 5. And Bill Trinen makes the justification here that a lot of care and work was put into this game by the team to justify the $10 price point, but that's also not unique to the Welcome Tour. A lot of care and work was put into Wii Sports as it was put into Astro's Playroom, and yet those experiences were free. We look at something like Astro's Playroom, it felt like a full-fledged game. It was free, so it is a shorter game, but 4 to 5 hours for a free game that kind of does a lot to showcase the PlayStation 5's hardware capabilities and that it's fun within its own right. I don't think that Switch 2's Welcome Tour will live up to Astro's Playroom, and it costs money, whereas this is completely free. Not to mention that for $10, I mean, the fact that it's $10, if it was like $2 or something, $5 at most, but even $5 is just a little too much, honestly. Again, it should be free, but at $10, I mean, when you think about what you can get for $10, Undertale is $10. You've got freaking Vampire Survivors is $5, and currently it's discounted to $4. You've got freaking Balatro, which for $5 more, you get this endlessly replayable game. There is no justification for the Welcome Tour being $10. That like I've seen gameplay of it, and a lot of the tech demo there is kind of neat, but neat tech demo should be kind of something integrated in the console at this stage, especially when you're releasing a new console, and especially when other console releases have kind of set the bar on that front. This right here just feels like such a regression to what other consoles have done that it's just hard to wrap your head around it. And whenever you give companies an inch in terms of them trying to kind of backpedal on consumer friendliness, I think they need to be called out so that we don't give them that leeway and room, because you give them an inch, they take a mile, they take everything. And going online, you can see that plenty of people are not happy about the situation, with plenty of folks highlighting how Welcome Tour is $10, but Astro's Playroom is completely free. Gene Park, who played Welcome Tour 4 times, straight up said this is like really neat and would have been a perfect pack-in. The Switch 2 Welcome Tour being a paid game is so out of pocket. I'm still not over that. A lot of people aren't, because it feels like the standards are kind of being lowered, which is just egregious. And looking at responses, people are mocking this whole situation, just utterly in disbelief that the audacity to do this would even exist. And so, yeah, look, again, it all comes back to, I love the Nintendo Switch 2's hardware. I love the games that are coming out for it. I think the Nintendo Direct did a really good job of like showcasing that Nintendo really kind of put a lot of love and care into refining the Switch 1 when making the Switch 2. And I'm sure the games coming out for it will be incredibly fun, and it is going to be a successful console. But because we care about Nintendo and its games and its platforms and its hardware, it's all the more reason to call this stuff out so that we don't let them push the boundaries too far, because not only is that bad for, those who want to partake in the Switch 2 ecosystem, it sets standards for gaming as a whole that might lead to regressions kind of industry-wide, because Nintendo is an industry leader, and what they do does have a ripple effect, and that's something that no matter what Bowser says, Nintendo can't get away from. And so their justifications, their responses, trying to justify everything they're doing here just falls completely flat. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the responses provided by Nintendo and the price points we're seeing for the Welcome Tour, the fact that Mario Kart World is $8, and frickin' Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, older games, are getting a price bump, especially like something like Tears of the Kingdom, which does not add new content. It being $8 base price is just freaking wild. But again, that's my take. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.